Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Grace Academy. My name is Natalie Franks, and I am the Executive Director of Programs and Development for the Grace Alliance. And I am so excited and glad that you have made it to this video, that you are participating in the Grace Academy. By now, you've hopefully heard a little bit about mental illness, the individual and the faith experience, the family, the grieving process, and what they go through. And today, I'm going to be talking about recovery. What does recovery look like? Can we recover from a mental illness? We know what recovery means in the context of breaking a bone, recovering from the flu, but how does that, play a part in recovering from a mental illness? Do we need to change our perspective, flip things around? And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. I hope you have that PDF training manual in hand to take notes. We have lots of wonderful information for you. And with that, let's dive on in talking about the recovery process from a faith-based lens. We all have this perception of what recovery looks like. And our society especially loves the overnight fix. When we think of recovery, like I said, we think of recovering from a cold, recovering from a sprained ankle. There's a start to the recovery process and there's an end. Ultimately, we reach this point of being recovered. And in a spiritual context, we can also search for recovery through this fix-it mentality. Well, maybe if I pray harder or I work harder to strengthen my faith, I'll be recovered. I'll reach that point of recovery. We're forced into this works-based mentality that ultimately reinforces insecurity, reinforces fear and anxiety. And I want to take this time to set aside our overnight fix-it mentality, both physically and spiritually, and put on a new lens for recovery. And this is one that's empowering, it's encouraging, it instills hope through a process. And this is a lens that you will want to take with you as you facilitate your support groups, one that you want to pass on to your group members so that they can redefine what recovery looks like within their life. Recovery means hope. It means resilience and renewal. Mental health recovery is defined as a strength-based and whole health process of change. And I think strength-based is a key word to focus on. We don't want to perseverate, to focus on weakness. We want to highlight, we want to empower and encourage the God-given strengths and abilities that each individual walks in with into your group session. Recovery focuses on rebuilding self-worth and purpose, learning self-management tools for difficult symptoms so that the individual can experience relief, find community support, experience a pure and simple rest in Christ. And this is where that renewing faith aspect comes in, redefining that relationship, setting aside that works-based mentality, coming to a place of learning how to rest in God's grace. And so as you can see, our understanding as an organization of recovery is this idea of whole health. Mental health recovery is not just a clinical brain matter. It encompasses renewal spiritually, mentally, physically, and relationally. So this picture here depicts all of those aspects, how they encompass mental health recovery. And you'll see that each lesson through our support group curriculum encompasses these holistic principles: renewal spiritually, mentally, physically, and relationally. Taking a look at this diagram here is going to provide us with that foundation to really see what that process looks like when it comes to recovery for mental illness. So this is a nice flow chart that we've created to give you an idea of what that process looks like for both the peer. So the bubbles in green, those green circles, depicts the process for the peer, and then the process for the family member the friend, the spouse, down in blue at the bottom. And so starting with this, I'm sure most of you are familiar with the fact that usually the family member and the peer enter into this process from a place of distress. There are often a lot of destructive problems that are present and taking place, and life may seem as really it's falling apart. Maybe both the family members and the peer, they're on their knees, they're crawling on their hands and their knees trying to get by. And thankfully, this process does not end there, because next we move into our first stage of recovery, this first bubble here, hope. For the peer and the top, they are transitioning from that place of distress to a place of stability. This can come from gaining that sense of support from a loving and accepting community, maybe even a living grace group. And with that sense of stability, they begin to take steps towards that personal self-management, that self-care. And essentially, they go from crawling to slowly standing up on their own 2 feet. Now, the family member enters this stage of hope as the manager. Their loved one may have a challenging time learning things, keeping things on track, managing medication. They may need help from this particular family member to really manage life. This family member goes from crawling on those hands and knees, that slow crawl, to being able to stand on those 2 feet firmly on that ground. The smallest of accomplishments instill us with the greatest amount of hope, which is why that's the first stage of that recovery process. And next we move on to the second stage of the recovery process, which is resilience. So for the peer, things are starting to improve day by day. They find themselves maybe moving into this place of function. They now have a new sense of stability, a growing sense of resilience, and they're able to bounce back a bit quicker when there's a setback that comes their way. They've learned new tools. They have new skills that are in their tool belt. And this may even mean that they don't need as much help managing every aspect of daily life. Now, one important thing here is this doesn't mean that the challenges disappear. Rather, they're learning how to navigate them from a place of healthy function. They're moving to a slow pace walk. For the family member, they're moving from a place of manager to a place of partner. They're finally able to relinquish some control and move into a place of empowering their loved one and walking alongside their loved one. From the family member side of things, there's a building of resilience within their relationship as their loved one continues to progress. Both the family member and the peer are moving from that place of standing to slowly walking forward. And finally, we move on to the last stage of this process, which is renewal. Both the peer and the family member move to a place of purposeful living. Life has a sense of renewal. We are no longer trying to get life back how it used to be, but rather creating a new normal, creating a new story. I love it, being restored. Life becomes a new journey with a new purpose. And we can take a process and we can try to still look at it through this old lens, thinking that when we reach the stage of renewal, we've recovered, we reached the end. But that's not the case. Just like the grieving process that we heard Casey discuss, recovery is not linear. Many times a new episode can occur and an individual can find themselves really back at that first stage again, trying to gain that sense of stability. Now, this is not a disaster. This is not failure, but this is part of the process. This is an opportunity for growth. And each time this happens, each time maybe someone returns back to that place of stability, it might become a little bit easier to work their way through from each stage. It may not take as long, especially as they learn new tools and skills through each and every stage of resilience and renewal. And this recovery process is not meant to be done alone or in isolation. William Anthony out of Boston University had a desire to study this recovery process. And in the midst of his studies, he discovered that community was the common denominator in mental health recovery. He determined that everyone in his study who had that sense of support from community moved further along in their recovery journey. And this is exactly why these support groups are so important, especially within the church. Now, you have reached the end of our presentation here on recovery. You may be wondering, well, what's next? What else do I have to learn? Well, we have 2 more videos left for you where Joe Padilla is going to be discussing how the group works. What are the ins and the outs of our support group? And then finally, I'll be coming back in our video number 6, discussing communication tools. What are different aspects, tools that I can learn in order to effectively lead my group, respond to the challenging situations, respond to the challenging instances. Real life examples where you're going to get to practice, interact with one another if you're in a group, or write down your answers in your nice PDF training manual. Well, with that, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Grace Academy, and I will see you very soon.